Hi everyone and welcome for this new tutorial how to paint the bloaters for the Blood Bowl Nurgle team from Games Workshop. So in this tutorial we are going to paint with airbrush and brush. So I use an airbrush from in Evolution 2-in-1 and the brush is Raphael 8404. Size 1 or 2 depending on the surfaces. So let's go for the paint. Starts by primed all the miniatures with the Nurgle green from Games Workshop, and I am going to use a turquoise from Model Color to put on the clothes. It's basically always the same things. I'm going to push all my different basic color on all the miniatures. I continue with some red brown. I'm going to put that on all the laser parts. That's pretty important when you push your basic color to use all the side of your brush to minimize the time you are going to take and to have a very clean surfaces. More you are going to use the end of your brush, more you are going to have some line or some not very clean surfaces. So after that I'm going to use the basic color for the metal, so it's a metal ball gun, and I'm going to use on the different metallic element. On these miniatures I'm going to make some true metal painting, so by using the metallic basic color and some pigment. I make a special video for using pigments, more complete video for all my Patreon, so don't hesitate to support me on my Patreon page. So I'm going to use now the Flesh 2 color from Pro Color. I'm very enjoying to paint with some Pro Color paints in my airbrush because it's more easy and more clean at the end. As you can see, I paint a lot of time 2 or 3 miniatures in the same time when I use airbrush because it's more easy and more efficient. As you can see, I don't stay too much in the same place when I use airbrush, just to be sure that the hair from my airbrush is not going to push my color on the mini. After that I make a second step with again the same color, but just by focus on a smaller point to create a transition and to create more contrasts on some few parts. I come back once again with my airbrush with just some white color to push my highlights on the clothes, on the turquoise, and I don't hesitate to push a little bit white, but very few on the flesh too. Take care about the quantity of white you push on the flesh because it's pretty important to push very few color at this moment. And once again I make it in different steps just to be sure my paint is totally dry before my next step. I think you understand what I mean. Don't hesitate if you have any question to post it in the comment section. That's the best way to have a quick answer. I come back with some whiskey color from Pro Color, and I'm going to push some global shadow. This color is perfect for the armor, but for the skin too, so I don't hesitate to push a lot of this color, and I use it to push my first highlights on the different leather parts, on the hand, the foot, and all the leather parts. I'm going to create very soon a shop, so you can easily buy some of my sculpture in resin casts. For example, I make a Nurgle beasts who will fit perfectly in a Blood Bowl team, and I will show that on my website when it will be ready. And by the way, you will be able to buy directly the mini I paint on my channel. So I'm going to use some black color now with my airbrush. The black color is very covering, so don't hesitate to push very slowly, and take your time and let the paint totally dry to see the real result. As you can see, using your brush is going to make you some gain of time, but you need for that to take a little bit time to keep more experience with airbrush first on some paper or anything else, to go on the miniatures after. I come back with some green on the eyes, just to make my other source lightning effects on the eyes. So I start with a green, and after that I'm going to push a little bit more yellow just on the eyes, on a very small point. I'm not going to try to paint everything with my airbrush, because after that I'm going to come back with my brush to make all the different details. The basic and the airbrush step is done. So now I come back with some strong tone from Army Painter. So I'm going to start by pushing some ink on some different parts. I push my strong tone on all the leather parts, for example, just to be sure that parts will not focus the eyes of people when they see the miniatures, because it's going to be darker and darker. That's always important to take care about your most important color. In that case, it's about the flesh, and after that we are going to take care about the other elements, but always to be sure that people is going to focus on the flesh. Actually, I push some red tone on every small part, and I come back with some turquoise just to create some layer. So this turquoise will be very diluted, and I am going to preserve my highlight I do with airbrush, and I just push some layer of this turquoise on every part to create a better transition. So it's perfect, for example, if you have some small point of white you do with airbrush, so you can clean like that just with your brush, and just by making some very small layer on different parts. I come back now with a little bit ivory into my turquoise, just to push more and more highlights on every edges. Just to push more and more contrasts on the clothes. As you can see, I always try to use the sculpture and the side of my brush to be sure my movement and my color will be put on the smaller surfaces I can. Don't hesitate to turn and to paint a part and to come back on this part later. Come back with some deep blue from Army Painter again. You can make it with some dark sea blue from Prince August too, and I'm going to push that in every recesses to create my different shadow. Once again, take care about the dilution of your color, and don't hesitate to have a color a little bit more diluted, and by having a very few quantity of color on your brush to have a better control of your color. I come back again just to push a little bit more highlight everywhere. More I'm going to use white color, more I'm going to reduce the surfaces I reach to be sure to create a better transition and something more clean. So I come back again with my deep blue, just with some wash into the leather, just to create a more deep effect, and I make the same on the flesh. this work on the flesh is going to make a better carnation on the flesh, so it's going to have a better effect at the end. I come back with some red, pure red from Army Painter, once again very diluted, just to push a little bit more color into my flesh and into the different Nurgle elements. I really hope you enjoyed this kind of tutorial. Don't hesitate to comment, like the tutorial and share to your friend. More you are going to be on the channel and more it's cool for me to make tutorial. I come back with just some elf flesh color. You can make it with some necrotic flesh too, that work. I make a previously I make a tutorial on the same kind of minis but just with brush, so you can take a look and give me your feedback about that. That's always a good thing to have some feedback on my work. I have a Facebook page too, More and Hearts, so you can follow me and I show what will be the next step and a lot of different stuff all during the week. And I had a little bit elf flesh into my red, just to push more highlights on the parts I already put in red. I come back with some necrotic flesh just between two different colors to create a better transition. More I'm going to paint, less I will have a paint on my brush. It's pretty important because that will give you a better control of your paint, and that's a very, very important point to progress in your paint skill. I will try to make you a complete review of contrast paint very soon when I receive them, so I hope very soon. And I think to make competition between contrast paints and Army Painter classical ink, because it seems to be very, very similar. So I will do that very soon, I hope. Come back with some ivory just for my last few points of highlights on the skin. And now I push a little bit of purple into the different recesses on the skin. I come back now with some light green from Prince August, and I push some very few points of highlights on the eyes. So this is some points and some line just all around the eyes, just to show the light come from the eyes. So if the light come from the eyes, so I'm going to push a little bit highlights on the different recesses, but in the good direction, so in the opposite direction of the light. And now I come back just with a little bit ivory into this light green, just to push a little bit more highlights on some few points to create this other source lightning effect. And now I had some pigments, so I'm using this kind of pigment I find in artist's shop, just to put into the recesses of my metallic part. So as you can see, my brush is a little bit, I had a little bit water into my brush. I take directly my pigment and I put this into the different recesses parts. Once again, I make a special video for my Patreon, so don't hesitate to support me, so you will have access on my Patreon page on all the special Patreon video. So when I put the pigment everywhere I want, I just remove the element I don't want with a Q-tip, as you can see, just to remove a little bit on the different edges and on some few parts. Now I'm going to continue by adding a little bit gray on all my leather part, just to push my highlights on the leather. As you can see, just some few points, some line, and it's always easy to do, but you just have to focus on very small part. Now I come back with some mithril silver on all the metallic parts, and I push my mithril silver in the direction of the light to create my highlights on the metallic parts. This is one of the first miniatures I do for the Blood Bowl team. For the next one, I will probably take a shoulder directly in turquoise, just to create and to put a number on it. I really hope you enjoy this tutorial. Don't hesitate to follow me on Facebook, to like this tutorial, to push some comment, and to support me on Patreon if you want. Thank you very much, and never forget to find some time to paint. See you guys.